Good evening. You're listening live to the Extreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob. Happy 2022 Father's Day to all you fathers out there. And of course, what would Father's Day be without talking about something very favorite to a lot of guys out there, and that's James Bond. I have alongside me tonight, as usual, Professor Pixel. We're discussing The Man with the Golden Gun, 1974, Roger Moore, and another outing of James Bond as we're starting to cruise through the 70s here a little bit. And I got to tell you, Pixel, as people start getting in the chat here a little bit, Man with the Golden Gun is... it's an interesting film for me. I'm a huge Christopher Lee fan. I'm a big Hammer horror films fan. This movie's got a lot of great stuff in it. It's unfortunately a mixed bag because it's got some stuff that if they all went campy, it would work. Yeah, but this movie's got a lot of dark, serious stuff to it as well that if it stayed with one tone all the way throughout, I think it could have really hit a home run. But here, you jump around a bit too much, and it leaves me kind of befuddled a bit about how it goes. With that being said, this is just a go-to. It's a very good film. It's, like I said, got some hit and misses, but I just like it a lot, and there's something extremely iconic about it, and I still have to put Scaramanga as one of my favorite and one of the best Bond villains of all time, at least to this point. Before we start diving into some of the particulars and going through the movie, what initial thoughts do you have about The Man with the Golden Gun?
I definitely have thoughts. I didn't know what to expect. This is my first time watching the movie, so going from what we came from before. Jeez. Sorry. The
storms are strong here in Central Florida. Yeah, we just got through them ourselves.
Yeah, they're ready. They're angry at the Man with the Golden Gun. Don't know why. But when it comes to this movie, I do agree that there's definitely things to enjoy. I loved Tattoo, or as he's called here, Knick Knack. Mm-hmm. And obviously Christopher Lee is great as Christopher Lee in anything. But I think that the best way to go is through, as is our typical fashion. So we should start with the opening gambit, huh?
Let's do it. Give it to me.
Well, when we open up, the first thing we get to see is a beach. And the first people we actually get to see is Tattoo. I wrote in my notes, Fantasy Island? Are we here?
This is before Fantasy Island.
Yes, but...
And this is 50 years ago. 48, really, but yeah, wow.
But you get to see... Christopher Lee, he's on the beach. He goes out of the water. He has 3 nipples, nothing to look at. What are you staring for? And that's when his little friend waves to a man to come on in to the facility who seems to be there to kill him. Pulls out a gun and everything, hands him the cash. It's very quick to the action, so it feels. But that's when Knick Knack, as we learn his name is, goes outside and he sets down a bottle and he goes ahead and motions Lee into the place. Well, this leads to a fight between the two, and we quickly get to see as Knick Knack has a control room, and he turns the house into this horror house, almost like a fun house with a twisted doorway and a hypnotizing image of Christopher Lee. And he goes through a couple almost like wax figure movie sets, the Wild West, Gangster Streets. The killer goes ahead and says that he's sorry to, I guess, Al Capone, because he says, wherever you are, don't hold it against me. And we get to hear Knick Knack as he's almost taunting his boss, which we learn his name, Mr. Scaramanga, or as I like to call him, Scary Manga.
Stop.
Yeah, I can't stop. So we get to see that he has this special weapon, this gun, this golden gun, and he goes ahead and tries to get to it. There's a fake wall, goes around, and it eventually comes down to Scaramanga and this man. They each have their weapons now, but Lee gets the ultimate shot, shoots him down, and then we notice a wax figurine of James Bond. And seems all of this was a game that Scaramanga set up for himself to test himself. And we have an idea of who his next target might be. And that's when the song comes in.
Go ahead and talk about the song, and then we'll pause there.
Can I talk about how this song is, it's kind of fun, I'll say. But then you start listening to it for more than 5 seconds and you realize, wow, this is bad. Like, really bad. Like, out of all the songs, very few of them can really stand on their own. I think most of them really rely on their movie and they kick in. So, okay, that's fun. Live and Let Die, which we've done, that was the best thus far. But they went from the best to the worst. Honestly, I really don't like this song at all.
Well, we're bound to have some duds with some things as we go through any series, whether it's television or movies. And one thing I have to say about Man with the Golden Gun is, I kind of agree with you, and I think a lot of people do too, in that, of course, just to reiterate, James Bond films are not American films. They're British films that have gotten really popular at this point, and this one did not do as well, obviously, as some earlier ones too, even though it made like about 10 times its budget. So it's still a massive hit. The thing with Roger Moore is people kind of knew who he was, and now he's playing a different role, or kind of a similar role, but he's playing Bond. So he's being compared, obviously, to the two before, or at least one, and Sean Connery. And while you and I, up to this point, thought On Her Majesty's Secret Service was the best Bond film by far, or at least up to this point, and that's, of course, debatable. I think the problem that The Man with Golden Gun suffers is that it tries to... It's a very retro film, and if you go in it knowing that and accept that, it's a lot more palatable. And again, the element of camp does start off here because it goes right into this funhouse at the beginning, and the problems that we'll talk about in a lot of the big scenes going through start with this opening. It's beautiful. We're in some faraway exotic land. We see this Asian-looking beach or whatever, which of course is Thailand, and you forgot to mention, or you left it for me to talk about, how Christopher Lee, Scaramanga's wardrobe here is a tracksuit. I mean, it's completely urban and hip, and I mean, this guy's rocking some serious fashion with the gold and stuff and the 3 nipples. And
I'm sorry, I was distracted by action.
Well, tracksuit special. I mean, you have to note these things when they come up. And again, trying to capture the spirit of the 70s is in here because when you get to the funhouse, this is kind of anachronistic. You've got a guy that's kind of like a gangster, even though this is the 70s and mafia's still around. The whole funhouse thing was kind of creepy in a way and weird, even though we're adults and all that too. It works with Christopher Lee because he's Dracula. To anybody growing up as a kid back then with Christopher Lee and Hammer horror films, he's the bad guy. He's tall, quiet, doesn't do anything. And here he gets to act. And he's tall. He's about 6'3", 6'4". And the fact that he has a gold gun and he has this vertically challenged individual who tries to keep him on his toes by trying to kill him is kind of this weird dynamic, and it's kind of cool. But then when they go into the theme song, to your point, it's a 70s song. It's not a giant big Bond song, and it's hard to follow. It's hard to follow Paul McCartney, man. I mean, I agree with you totally. So I don't hate it, but you're right. I can't argue against it. And we're going to talk about this in some next scenes too, because as we see Bond summoned, to his headquarters, a gold bullet's been found with 007 on it. So a message apparently is being sent, and James Bond is working on his current job of finding the Solix agitator from this gentleman, because the Solix agitator is the thing they're chasing because it's supposed to help solve the energy crisis. And a brief aside here, we've talked about here on the Extreme Movie Show, some of our science fiction films and older ones, about how certain concepts have been put into science fiction since the 50s and 60s, whether it's the science part or the government part. The current move in the fourth industrial revolution today with electric cars and everything else worldwide and things rearranging is a phenomenon that is occurring. In the 70s, you had supposedly this glimmer of what was called global cooling. at the time, not global warming. And so there was this energy crisis because America had just got off the gold standard a year or two previously with Richard Nixon, which ushered in a wave of stagflation for about 10 years. And the reason why this is important is because it was such a big deal. And with the not having the reserves in the world backed up by gold, you now have what's called kind of like this oil dollar, which is based off the American dollar. And it sent a lot of shockwaves all around the world, so much so that, again, this idea of an energy crisis, we have energy being created. It's just how does it get from point A to point B? That's the supply chain issue. And we have similar things going on currently in America and around the world for whatever reason. I like how this movie takes a concept like that, but doesn't harp on it. It simply says, here's something that's currently going on in the world. And you can agree with it or not, but they don't dwell on it. It's not that big of a deal. And I appreciate it because we don't really care about that, do we, when we're watching a Bond film? No,
Yeah.
we care about Bond doing detective stuff. And then here it kind of works a little bit because basically the idea is if that Bond can find out what's going on with Scaramanga, then maybe Scaramanga won't get the skinny on him. He can turn the tables a little bit, and his boss, who's just a hard ass basically is like, that would be right, so right, wouldn't it, Bond? And he's like, I see what you mean, sir. And so it turns out that number two, I believe it was 002, had been shot and killed in Beirut. And so he goes to the club where he's at to see a lady that he knew he had hooked up with because he's trying to get the skinny on what's going on here. And the one thing I will say, despite the campiness of this whole movie, the writing's brisk enough and quick enough where you can put these pieces together and it leaves the parts that need to fill out space to be James Bond work. Because he meets a belly dancer who just happens in her navel to have this piece of gold in there, which guess what? It was Bill Fairbanks, and it was him getting shot by Scaramanga years ago. Went through his neck, as she explains when he visits her backstage, and she took it before the police arrived, and that's her lucky charm. And of course, the bad guys are out to get Bond, and there's a really bad fight in there where he's trying to make out with her and steal the charm out of her belly button, and then he accidentally swallows it. And then, of course, when he defeats the baddies and leaves the room, you hear her look at her navel and see it. And she goes, "Oh, I've lost my charm." And it's like, "Not from where I'm standing." And then he walks down the alleyway and he finds a taxi cab and he's like, "Taxi, mister?" He's like, "Yes, quickly." And he's like, "Hotel?" He's like, "No, nearest pharmacy." And then when they get to the lab and they do the ballistics things with Q, that's kind of cool. You get the Roger Moore kind of humor in there too, but there's a great throwaway line in here too that I'm like, man, I forgot about this one, where he goes, "Man, I hope so. You guys have no idea what I went through to get that." Meaning he had to go get an enema. I mean, it's sharp, but it's different than what Sean Connery would go through. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I like what's going on here, but it's got that kind of campy thing when we had some creepy stuff there. You know what I'm saying?
Don't you just love the audible gulp? It's definitely different. And I didn't dislike the start, but how fast it's all moving. This
Yes.
movie is just about as long as the rest, but it is constantly going because we go straight from here. He's already accused. He has the bullet out, and they go ahead and they figure out the name Lazar, and that's the
Lazar,
guy who designed the bullet, and where you can find him. He goes to Macau, and quickly he's able to get some answers from him. But then Lazar realizes, okay, he's not here for business, and they're already in a casino where the bullets are being, where the deal is done, pretty much. He sets them in the cup, and they go to this lady who picks them up, and Bond follows her to a hotel. It's quite it's surprising how quick that it is, and we get to meet Goodnight, which made me wonder: are they? I know that Bond has these sidekick women that come in, and their names are something quick and cute. But Goodnight, really?
I know it's the British sense of humor, and the thing is in Macau, back after World War II, you still had communism going around that we mentioned previously before, and it's an element that comes into play because Hong Kong was its own sovereign nation at the time. It currently no longer is; it just fell. I think in 2020, technically, even though it had been independent for some years before. But Macau was a place where the rich used to go and gamble and stuff in a highly dense, populated place. It's across the shore from Hong Kong. Is that important? It kind of is in the movie because of the setting and everything too. But the two things I still want to point out, I know I said about Scaramanga in his tracksuit, but Bond's really rocking some great suits, and he's got this outfit when he gets off the rickshaw or whatever, when he's looking for Lazar. It's pretty cool. And the one thing Bond did, especially in the early films, that I really like is they would go on location and film a lot of these street scenes and stuff with people, and they all appear to be authentic with what they're doing and all that. And I think that's just great. It really makes you feel like you're there, even though if you go into a room, it's going to be a stage set, but it just makes you feel like you're in Macau, even though you're not. I like Lazar, and I like this whole scene, and this is a very dark scene. This is an excellent scene here because we know Lazar's a guy that makes bullets. So maybe we think he's a bit of an ass, or he works for the dark side, or whatever you want to call it. He's just an independent person working to make money, and he recognizes Bond, invites him down into his workshop, and Bond goes to fire off this gun because there's an issue that he's working with, and the gun is designed for somebody with 3 fingers because he had lost the top 2. So it's unbalanced. So Lazar's kind of showing off, but there's this professional level of courtesy going back and forth between these two. And this is just a nice little acting job here. I think in things like this, scenes, Roger Moore really, really shines well because he can look kind of annoyed, kind of pissy, but stern. And it's neat in this workshop because Lazar's walking around, he's explaining stuff. Bond's basically letting him know, hey, I'm looking to find out who you're making these gold bullets for, or who your customer is. And Lazar really doesn't want to give it up. Rightly so. This is all makes perfect sense. And then just the way they're walking around, Bond just kind of casually, as he's talking to him, turns around, walks back to the gun, rotates it around, just shows it to him. And because Roger Moore is a handsome fellow, he's not the Sean Connery type. You have to get the professionalism and the Bond stuff differently. Here he aims the gun at the guy's crotch, which kind of seems a little bit campy, but Roger's delivery isn't anything but in here. Lazar's
I've got this rifle aimed at your groin.
He's like, yeah, so speak now or forever hold your peace. But the way he says it, it's not funny. And he shoots between his legs, and it's like, you're right, 3 fingers, and he loads it up again. This is good because we can't expect Roger Moore to physically intimidate somebody like a Sean Connery, right? It's a great scene. It's fantastic. It's one of the best scenes in the whole movie to me. And you're right. This is where they find out about how it all works. And it's, to your point earlier about how brisk things are moving, we're maybe a half hour into this, and we're already seeing the deal go down so he can find it. And it's neat because you get to see where people are gambling and how everything's changing hands. It looks like ordinary people at tables and stuff too. I love seeing these kinds of things. He puts the cigarette case that has the gold bullets in it, and it's in this little canister that gets risen up there. I just love these little kind of shots. It's really just freaking awesome too. And of course, we see a beautiful woman that Bond follows. He follows her across the bay of Hong Kong there, which is great, past the sunken ship that is called Rustain hanging out, which I believe is an actual real-life ship. They integrated some of the old war stuff into the Bond novels, but definitely some of the films too. So when he gets off the hydrofoil and all that, and he meets Goodnight, this is when I felt very disappointed because, look, you can have 2 hit women, Bambi and Thumper. You can have all these sexual innuendos for names, and we get it. And Goodnight's kind of a tame version. My problem with what they did with Goodnight, the actress Britt Ekland, is they really, really made her a dingbat. And this will mean nothing to you because you're in your early 20s there too, and she's about 80 years old. But she had been in a few movies up to this point. I believe she was in a Rod Stewart song, Tonight's the Night. Absolutely gorgeous, beautiful woman. And they make her seem like a complete bimbo dum-dum in here instead of professional or anything else with it. And to me, that's one of the worst things they could have done in this movie, is that they made a Bond villain or Bond girl not be a villain, but be stupid and just dumb. It's not the right thing to do, and I don't know why they did it. It's every scene with her in here is cringe, and it really takes away from it to me. I absolutely hate it.
Which one were we watching that was on the oil rig at the end?
Oh, with Tiffany Case, that would be Diamonds Are Forever, the last John
Diamonds
Connery
Are
one when he
Forever.
came back. Yep.
There's kind of moments at the end where I felt that they did that to the Bond girl there. They dressed her up in a bikini, and
Yep.
then she was going around and she kept making stupid mistakes. And they're already doing it again, just starting off with Goodnight with her introduction, because she cuts Bond off of a taxi that he was going to have Taylor. But he's able to figure out where she is and quickly go after her. But I agree. Goodnight, sadly, has just been made an absolute dumbass. I'm not going to hold back. That's what she is.
Well, so, and the thing is, you start right here where he's going to the hotel because, again, to your point, with things being really, really brisk, he's tracking this beautiful, gorgeous woman that we don't know what's going on with her necessarily to this point. Obviously, she's a major player in it too, but he goes to follow her, and he just kind of thinks off the top of his feet. He gets the gentleman to kind of open the door, with a bottle of champagne. And he's dressed up in a suit, so he looks great. I love this next scene, but however, people that talk about it today, I think, how do I say it? It's Miss Anders. She's Scaramanga's, I'm not going to say significant other. She seemed like she's basically a hired woman and a lady of the evening, if you want to call it that, an escort.
She's his side piece. The game is his real.
But she can't get away, and is what she alludes to. And we see that in some scenes here. This is kind of disturbing because the way she talks about and everything, but I think she portrays herself as a woman in trouble very well. And Bond's in a room, she's taking a shower, and he confronts her about it, and he basically beats the shit out of her and slaps her around to get information out of her. And I love it. I think it's a great scene. I think anybody thinks, oh, Roger Moore's coming in to be a pretty boy Bond and can't rough it up a little bit, here you go. And I don't care what people have to say about the reality of the situation. Yeah, we have guns in movies and people get threatened and all that, but Roger Moore, he's not fucking around here, and I like it. I mean, again, I said before, this movie's got some dark stuff to it. The music in the scene is great. The room looks tremendous. This is a tremendous scene, just like Lazar. And I'm going, man, they're really setting him up to be this badass kind of guy, and, in between bouts of comedy. And this scene works, and I wish there was more of these kinds of scenes. Not solely women getting beat up at him.
Really?
Doing it. I do. I think this is a very tough scene. Yeah.
Because I think that we've obviously seen Bond have to go ahead and take the upper hand with a woman from time to time, but in most cases, I feel it's far more warranted. I think here he jumps to it really quickly when Bond in the past would have gone another way about it. He would have held her down, but his holding down would have led to something different to get the information out of her. I think here he just he does get right to it, but it's a little rushed to me for what we've seen from Bond in the past to what he's doing right now. It just doesn't line up, in my opinion. But he gets the information, knows where he has to go. The Bottoms Up Club, and interesting bartenders. Where's that club?
That's G-rated for Bangkok standards.
Yeah, but guess what? We're only there for a second. The club doesn't really matter. I expected a full scene in there, but no, Bond's outside. He's just casing the joint. Yep. And Scaramanga is watching, waiting after an evening with Miss Anders, and he has the gun. He has it pointed, and it seems while Bond's walking, he's shooting at him. But that's when we notice two men come out. And he takes his shot, and the one guy just drops to the ground, this random man. And he has this other guy with him who claims he's a cop quickly and pulls Bond along as real police arrive. And Bond, in that moment, is wondering, where the hell am I being sent to? And in fact, there's this one, there's a shipwreck that they show earlier in the movie. And the boat passes right by it, and Bond goes ahead and makes a break for it because he's not getting answers. And as he arrives on the ship, there's this loudspeaker that says, "Oh, well, we've been waiting for you, Mr. Bond." And it opens right up. He goes ahead in, and who's there? Other people who are with the organization. And they quickly reveal that this is tied into the energy crisis, because Scaramanga just killed the man that they were looking for all along. What was his name? Gibson.
Yep.
And he has this solar cell that the quick design fits in the pocket, a Solex, they call it. And he had it in there, but after he was killed, it disappeared. And they tie it to some man named High Fat. And it's just so fast. It's almost unbelievable. It's almost too much all at once for me. But
you're right. It's moving along fast, and it feels more like a spy than an action kind of part to the film, which I appreciate. We don't necessarily are aware of some global agenda or anything like that, and these kind of Bonds, whether more spy stuff, are better to me with a little bit of the cat and mouse game, chasing and investigating stuff. Don't know who Scaramanga is other than what little we saw, because even though his suit game is so on in this movie, he's wearing a nice medium light gray combo with a blue tie, and when he's beating the crap out of Miss Anders, we see her coming out kind of sort of nude, but they do it tastefully, and I always like it when they do that. They're not afraid to put the beauty of a woman up naturally like that, rather than something flashy, or at least in early Bond films, despite the naming conventions they do. But the reason of the Bottoms Up Club is to remind us where Macau, it's supposed to be a seedy, decadent place, especially after World War II, with the massive amounts of prostitution that go on during war and all that stuff. Because we see a guy at a bar being served by a lady in lingerie, crawling around. That's why it's called the Bottoms Up. And this is the guy that shows up saying his please. But there's this neat little scene where Bond's smoking on a stogie, like you say, occasionally joint out. And this time his evening wears, I don't know if it's like a brownish olive type color, but he just looks great in the suit. And I'm like, what the hell is this, man? He's as good as Sean Connery, just a couple movies in. But uncomfortably, we see a brief clip of Scaramanga with Miss Anders in a giant bed, and brown was a big, huge color in the 70s. I'm just gonna flat out say, I'm not saying that's right or it's wrong. I'm just saying it was. And this is like a cocoa brown, because Scaramanga is getting ready to put it to her, and she does not look like a happy camper. She's like laying there like a starfish. It's like, okay. So what is he doing? He's getting himself up for the kill, is what it is. Because in the next scene with the hit going on, you're right. This happens super fast, and Parvis is going, okay, what's going on? Oh, hey. They spent a lot of time showing the ship, like you said, and everything. That's good stuff. I like it, and I like it a lot, because it turns out this guy is Hong Kong police. And where are they going with this? Well, it was big in the 70s? Kung fu films, karate films. Thank you, Bruce Lee. It even infiltrated not just James Bond films, which again we know are British films, but also in Hammer horror films. There's even karate vampire type stuff in some of the Hammer horror films in the late 70s, and disco things. So that's what I mean, is that it gets a little bit dated with the content that was so hot at the time or whatever. And the other thing too, because we're in a cell phone age, I got to point this out. You always had two phones on your desk when you were a bigwig. You had the black phone, which is where you took all your main calls, and you had your red phone, which is the serious one. And if you're the president of the United States, you had the red button. And then Ronald Reagan used to always joke about pressing the red button, making people think he was going to give the codes to nuke somebody. And every time M and the whole intelligence staff appear on some remote corner of the earth in Bond films, because we will see more of this, they always have their two phones on whatever improvised desk they have. I just think it's great. We get the information dump here about how these guys are going to have to work together and all that. It's like, okay, I mean, it is what it is. But because we're in a strange land, we get the cultural part to it, where you see Bond and him working together, and Bond still smoking a cigarette or a cigar. They break into a place where this is where it gets even more insulting, but this is more of a Bond thing. Sees this Asian woman swinging this really nice long pull, and her name is Chew Me. And he's like, really? And he takes off his jacket. And the plot here is that if he puts this fake third nipple on, well, this guy, High Fat, doesn't know what Scaramanga really looks like because there's no picture on him in paper. He works through proxies, right? So Bond's going to impersonate being Scaramanga to get close to this guy, High Fat, so he can see what's going on with the whole Solix thing. So you're right. 45 minutes to an hour in, we have a lot going on here too. Beautiful private grounds here. Like it a lot. Bond thinks he's made the right connection, said the right things too. He dismisses them because they go to have dinner or whatever, and he tells his friends. But then we see a cutaway. Scaramanga in his white linen suit is there with High Fat waiting for him. And this is pretty cool here. I like this because it shows that Scaramanga, despite what we might say about some of the bad guys or the war type of themes that have been in these movies before, this is just straight up an individual guy. And right now, Scaramanga is just crushing it in the film. I mean, everything's great up to this point. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. This was actually one of my favorite parts. To go after he's going to join him for dinner later. He goes outside. We get to see as Scaramanga is looking out, and High Fat gives this whole, well, look right here. Look at my mausoleum. One day soon I'll be buried here, but not that soon. I will not let Mr. Bond mess with my plans. And quickly we cut to dinner. I mean, when Bond gets picked up, he gets picked up with the Hong Kong agent's nieces in the back seat, and they're just giggling and talking to each other in their native tongue. And it actually gets him in trouble with Goodnight, because every time Goodnight is seen Bond leave, he has some woman to accompany him. So he gets in the car, and the guy drives him. He arrives for dinner, and all these statues that we saw earlier have been replaced with real people. So he has to fight like these two sumo wrestlers, and one guy he defeats by grabbing his ass and then giving him a wedgie.
Not funny.
No, not funny. I'm just laughing because of how stupid it is.
Yeah.
But Knick-Knack, he gets the upper hand. He knocks Bond out, and he's about to stab him right then and there. But High Fat actually stops him and says, no, not here. This is my home. Come on. Go ahead and take Mr. Bond to school. And we quickly move to Bond waking up, stirring, saying that he's in heaven because he has these three women rubbing up all over him. And that's when the walls are opened. He's made to sit up and watch. Two students go on this large padded mat, and one of them dies. Just swords, random sword fight. One of them dies, and then another goes out there, and after Bond has his tea, he's motioned to get on the mat. So he is able to fight through this one guy, and then another comes, and he basically defeats him before bowing to the sensei, whatever you want to call him, and running through this mesh door. And out there, guess who's there? It's the Hong Kong agent and his nieces. And the nieces actually, their father runs a karate school, because they help defeat some of the students as they come chasing after Bond. And you think that they quickly get away, but no, because the Hong Kong agent gets his nieces in the car, and he just drives off as Bond is forced to run, take a speedboat. And you know who we get to see as he's on this speedboat and he's passing through?
No, I don't know who.
It's Chef J.W. Pepper down by the bayou. Let me tell you, wouldn't happen in his swamp. Oh, God.
Yeah. How do you feel about J.W. Pepper showing up in another movie.
I have right here my notes. JW is there on vacation, something I never needed to know.
Okay.
It's just so random. So random. Though I will say there actually is a funny scene where the boat somewhat stops and there was this boy on a tourist boat and he was trying to sell this wooden carved elephant. And so he jumps and goes to Bond's boat and Bond says, "Oh, well, I'll give you 20,000 baht if you could get this boat moving any faster." And all he does is push on a switch and it gets the engine running right again. And he's like, "Oh, okay, well, I'll have to pay you later." And he pushes the boy out of the boat as he's saying, "No, come on, play tourist, give me my 20,000 baht." But it's just there. It's there.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about a lot of this, unfortunately. Like, okay, it's there. Oh, there's a genuine moment where it's like, get a chuckle, but it doesn't carry the weight. You know what does carry the weight, though? The next scene. Because Scaramanga is back at High Fat. And High Fat is about to go into hiding because, well, Bond got away and we know what he's planning to do. And he takes the Solex out of the vault, sets it down, and gives it to Scaramanga. Says, "Keep that with you. Keep it safe." But with that in his hand, Scaramanga just goes ahead and says, "Well, I'm done with you." Shoots him, and it seems he's going to be buried in his mausoleum, just like he wanted. It's very frustrating because there are a lot of nice scenes like that, but we have to go from there to Bond out with Goodnight, and I'll go ahead and take a breath and let you go ahead and talk us through this.
To me, I kind of like this extended scene. I have a love-hate with it too because martial arts, like I say, were such a huge thing in the 70s. I mean, you could argue that they got so big they could not be ignored anymore, and they had been put in Bond films. That's how big they were, and I don't disagree with it here. So when we get to see Bond, when he gets knocked out, when he's in the garden there at night for dinner with High Fat, when he's cornered and captured, you made a point about the sumo wrestlers being real people that were like posed like as statues. It was like that, I thought, when you watch the opening Gambit too, when we have the gangster going in and he's looking for Scaramanga in the funhouse of horror there, the shootout there. Even Bond looks like he's actually Roger Moore, just making like he's a statue. And that's what adds to the creepiness factor to it, which is weird. And then here it's kind of cool. He's walking around at night and he gets assaulted and he gets captured. Of course, he stands up Goodnight again because it's been intimated that he's banged her before and she wants another round and he could care less about her. I like when he wakes up and he's in the karate garden. It is the next day, and it's so slow deliberately. Whether I think somebody likes the scene or not, I think the scene is done impeccably well, where you're seeing the displays of different martial arts there, and you're getting to watch that in a pure form in a Bond movie. And is it a major part of the Bond movie? Well, kind of culturally it is, and this is where one of the things about Bond I always thought was great is that you could do these types of things around the world because Bond gets to do that. He's a cultural man. He's world traveled. He's the guy we always wanted to be when we were a kid, doing stuff like that. And of course, when you're a kid, you always like karate. And I like how in here, nothing is spoken, nothing is said. You get to see everybody in their natural state practicing all these different forms. And then Bond realizes, oh, I guess I'm the lamb of the slaughter here, because he goes up against this one guy, Chula, whose an actual name, I forget what it is, but we've seen him in a lot of other films before as far as being a martial artist. I like it how he basically, beats the shit out of Bond, and Bond can't really do anything. His American style does not work. So once he manages to kind of scrape his way through, he does a very smart thing. When they go to bow and he bows first to the other guy, he's not looking at Bond, so Bond kicks him and runs off. I'm like, okay, I could see this version of Bond having to do that, right? He's not going to overpower him. But then it goes completely overboard with the ninja style girls and the little outfits, schoolgirl outfits, beating the shit out of everybody and stuff. I mean, it's an extended action sequence, and it really is cool. And I like when he gets on the boat. This looks gritty. It looks like it's actually shot there. And the kid's like, 100 baht, 200 baht, 50 baht, and he shoves the kid off, which I thought was kind of evil, but I'm kind of glad he did it. I don't know why. It's like, you screwed me. And then when you see Pepper, it's like they're just going to punish me and keep punishing me. And I guess I don't have a problem with getting punished with it, because Bond driving around in a motorboat is one of the things in life we're going to get used to. But
Bond motorboating is something to get used to. Mark it down in your notes, kids.
Exactly. But it's cool when High Fat comes in the office again, Cocoa Brown everywhere. And you see Scaramanga at High Fat's table, and he's basically talking about stuff, because he's the one that hired Scaramanga to kill what's his face, to get the Solix agitator. While Christopher Lee's sitting there taking it, listening to the guy, you see him assembling his gun made out of gold. He's taking out his lighter. He's taking out his cufflink, and he's assembling it, and he shoots him. And then he tells his friends, and this is the only time he sounds evil, like he sounds like Count Dracula's, like, bury him in it. This is singularly one of the best Bond gadgets, period, in all films. It's functional. It's useful. It's tied into this character. It's an essence of who he is. It's not the stupid remote control BMW car from The World Is Not Enough, which I despise, even though I have a soft spot for that movie. This is just so friggin' badass. It's great. Scaramanga's the man now. He's got the stroke. And we cut to, unfortunately, I don't know. I like dinner scenes with Roger Moore more than I do. And again, we don't give Connery enough credit on these things, but you play to each actor's strengths, right? He's at this dinner now, and he's having the Foo Yuck Duck or wine with a dinner, and he basically does woo her over, and he's good at this stuff. He really, really is. He gives her every reason for why they should get down tonight or whatever, but when he gets to the room and she comes out, she's all ready to get frisky, and they start smoochy, and walks Miss Anders. So Bond's basically talking to her, and she's letting him know that, hey, I've got some info for you may want. And well,
meanwhile, he has who underneath the blanket as set up as, oh look, it's my 3-pillow setup just in case.
Yeah. What's cool is she lets him know, hey, I'm going out on a limb here to let you know I've got some information. I'm the one that sent the bullet because I needed to get you to help you free me from him. And I like this because she still comes across as a bit of, I hate to say classy lady, but she does seem a bit upscale, but terribly frightened in the way she acts about Scaramanga. It's really adds to Scaramanga's legacy, even though we've only seen him a little bit. They've made the most out of all the screen time they've had with Scaramanga here. So of course he puts Miss Goodnight in the other room while she comes out, and Bond's dropping a lot of seed here too, and it's just one of those scenes where you couldn't be had with it. But then we get into a creepy scene, culturally speaking, afterwards, which I'll pause and let you transition us into that.
Yeah. So after his evening with Miss Anders, and not Goodnight, he has Goodnight stored in the closet. She comes back to Scaramanga's place, which is actually on his boat, and she takes off her jewelry and stuffs it in the vault as Scaramanga is just laying there like he's Dracula again, honestly. With how still he is, it is kind of creepy. And as Bond opens the closet, I expected him to just go ahead and move on to Goodnight, but Goodnight's almost not having it. I think Bond could have talked his way into more, but I think he just wanted some good old-fashioned rest. But it leads to the next morning. Anders is going to get the Solex before he goes to kill Scaramanga. And that's that. They go to this boxing match, and that's where he's supposed to meet her. and he sits down. He has the Hong Kong agent and Goodnight stationed nearby.
Mm-hmm.
And he moves and sits next to Miss Anders and says, "All right, so are we going to do this deal?" And Miss Anders is just staring forward, absolutely still, not making any any other sort of expression, just absolutely still. And he's looking at her, and that's when he notices a gunshot directly on her chest. She's dead and just sitting there, stuck staring. And that's when Scaramanga just sits right next to him and introduces himself, has a short conversation. As Bond went to go look and see if the Solex is in her purse, it's not there. He has no idea where it is. And it turns out it's actually right there on the ground. It must have fallen out of her purse after she was shot. But quickly, Bond is able to pass it off. He's able to use his foot, get it to him, drop something, pick it up, and hands it to the Hong Kong agent, who's actually a peanut vendor at the event right now. And they switch it around. The agent takes it out to Goodnight, says, "You keep that, you keep it with you, go ahead," and then heads back because Bond may be in trouble. But Scaramanga basically is there to give him warning, say, "Stay out of my business." And he gets up, he goes, and we actually get to see Knick-Knack, who had a gun to Bond. He slipped away, and Goodnight noticed him. So she follows him to the car. This movie could have ended in another 30 minutes with actually going ahead and killing Scaramanga because he's a threat. Or they could have just ignored him because, honestly, who cares? But the mission is totally screwed up by Goodnight because she couldn't use her head. And she follows him to his car and tries to open up the trunk to drop a homing beacon. And Scaramanga just pushes her in, shuts it, and they're off. And now we need another chase scene because it's a Bond movie.
Yep.
Gosh, I was never... I've never felt more infuriated by a side character in a Bond film than I am right now.
Yeah, and the thing too is okay. We can talk about the sexual hijinks and hiding a woman so he could sleep with Miss Anders because she's promised him the Solex. So everything literally is coming to him, no pun intended, where he can just, it sounds easy, right? And we've talked about how he's gotten lucky before a little bit, even Sean Connery's version. And so, after they've sealed the deal or whatever, it's great. They go to this place where you see something in the culture, and in the background you hear the small audience going crazy over this movie tie thing. And you're right, as a kid this creeped me out. I'm like, oh, this guy's that good of a shot, he could somehow shoot her in a room full of people yelling and screaming and all that. Now we can talk about how believable that is or not, but we don't necessarily see it. But just the fact that she's just staring off there, it's just a great visual. And again, this is in a dinky, ratty old place or whatever with normal looking people. It's probably 85 degrees outside, sweaty, if even in the dry season there in Bangkok. And so, yeah, it just lets us know how great Scaramanga is as a bad dude. And when Scaramanga sits down, I'm telling you, there's not been a bad guy even close to his level as far as seeming proficient, elegant, smart, whatever you want to call it, an even match for Bond or even greater. And just staring at his face as he's giving this little speech about how he was a trick shot artist and somebody mishandled an elephant that he was friends with and basically mistreated him to death, and he killed the dude who did it and all that, then went rogue. It's taken out of the book, of course, and things have been modified. We won't get into what's changed, but they do keep a chunk of it there that's similar or whatever. But it's really neat watching several things going on. Okay, here's Bond again. He can't overpower himself out of the situation. He's dealing with a superior foe. Of course, any woman he sleeps with now, as much as they're falling into literally his hands, bad things happen around them. He sees the Solex on the ground while Scaramanga's given this beautiful story and this speech about things. And so it's kind of cool to watch it and think off the top of his head, let me call the guy who's my in here, that's selling the nuts and give it to him. And you're right. I'm like, this is fucking cool. This is really great how it's been on. This is spy stuff. This is great. And she looks fantastic in her outfit. She's a natural beauty, I have to say. But as soon as she sees Nick Nack and just makes the choice to chase him, you're going, can you just not be any more stupid than this? It's dumb. It makes no sense. It gets beyond ridiculous. This is worse than J.W. Pepper. I mean, it's not even close. It upset me because this stuff was really, really good. And Bond driving the car out of the glass window from the show place there because AMC or whoever it was had to tie in with the movie. I get you work scenes in like that, and I love how they're driving around a really old looking place, and it doesn't look like it's a really rich place. It's the actual streets of it, right? So that's cool, but I just went on and on and on. But I have to say this, and this is the thing that really pisses people off the most. One of the best Bond stunts up to now, and it's an incredible one, is where he backs up and JW's going ape shit in the front seat, and he's like, "You're not gonna jump over that, are you?" And it's like, "I sure am, boy." And this is a legit stunt that was filmed, and there's a slide whistle that plays as they're in the air, which is completely stupid, but that is going to happen in a few Bond movies. It's iconic. I remember as a kid, everybody talking about that little stunt and how we see it in slow motion, how he's able to go over the river. But we can't just sit there and marinate and bask in the glow of this really awesome stunt, despite JW being there. As cool it is, and as much as we're given everything, every possible shadow of doubt, benefit, let's say, we see them creep up to the facility where they think they saw the car go into, and then what happens when the police arrive and JW gets arrested? And we're like, okay, how's this going to end? It turns out some of the technology that IFAT had been working on, I guess Scaramanga's privy to, because the car, they attach a plane housing on top to it, and then they drive off and they pull off and they literally fly the car away over all the rice farms and all that, while Miss Goodnight's in the trunk opening up going, "Oh great, I can," and then it's like wonka wonka wonka, and then M's just telling everybody to shut up and he's pissed, and everybody's looking great in suits, but I'm where M's at. I'm furious at this point. I'm just so disgusted because it was so good. And then I don't know. It's like they were marking out for themselves, because I just feel like we're getting shit on with the comedy stuff. We don't need it. It's rubbish.
When that scene happens, and the dumbest one in the entire exchange is Goodnight and not J.W. Pepper,
yep,
you know something's wrong.
Yep.
Oh, and it's just so damn sad.
But as fast as all this is moving, we're basically here, in the last 30 minutes, 40 minutes or so. We're in the third act, the last act. Take it away.
Yeah. Well, Bond, after explaining everything to M, says that once the signal is located, that he'll fly low under the radar and get to Goodnight, so that way he can go ahead and get the Solex. I'd leave her ass there if I could, but no, he says, "Oh, I'll go ahead, I'll get her." And quickly he takes a plane. He's noticed. There was no point in flying low. They notice him, and they go ahead and give a call to Scaramanga, who owns an island there, and he says, "Oh, yes, let him come, but don't worry, he won't be leaving." And Bond lands. Guess who's there? Tattoo. I mean, Nick Nack. And he's like, "Oh, here you go." And he has a bottle of champagne. And Scaramanga at this point is showing off. He goes ahead, he shoots the cork off, and honestly, this is a lot of fun. I love
yeah, it is a good scene.
I love seeing Lee have this kind of like, "Oh, look at me. I'm sorry, Mr. Bond, come on in." And he takes him in. He shows him the whole solar array. And what's his downfall is, well, after dinner, because they do have dinner, Goodnight is in a bikini, which is just another sign of when you have a Bond girl who ends the movie in a bikini, most of the time she's just going to be a dumbass. But goes ahead, he explains how he wants to fight Bond. He doesn't want to. He wants to kill him, yes, but he wants a challenge of it. And so he suggests, how about we go ahead and have ourselves a little duel? My gun against yours. I'll let you have 6 bullets. All I need is 1. And they go ahead, skip to it. And they take 20 paces, and they're about to turn around and shoot. And Scaramanga has run off. Why? Because he's set up his whole haunted house bit once again. And Knick-Knack is actually there to lead him on to where he can go. And he says, oh, yeah, you go ahead and kill him, because once he's dead, all this is mine. Which is, I mean, it could be, I guess, but it's bullshit. And he goes ahead, gets in the control room, and starts leading them around. I do admit, I do like this set. I do like the whole setup of, oh, look, it's a twisted haunted house. That's cool and all. But this is nothing. I'm a little disappointed, because ultimately Bond is able to slip in. He takes an underpath that sets up this fake model of some city. And he's able to slip into the main room. He takes the place of the wax figurine of Bond, and he's able to shoot Scaramanga in the back. And he's done. He's over. There's no winning here, for Scaramanga. He went from a really great villain to handled within, oh, look at that, 10 minutes. Good job. It's kind of sad. So they go ahead. He goes ahead at the point of the mission. Let's go to the Solex. But Goodnight, in that time, there's one other person on the island. I don't remember his name. He's of no consequence. He's about to make
button presser in the back.
He's the button presser in the back, exactly. And he was about to make moves on Goodnight. Well, Goodnight goes ahead. She has a chance with the creep as he's checking stuff out, and she just knocks him into one of the I guess coolers, one of the cooling engines for the solar array, and basically don't go below 0, because otherwise the whole system will blow. Goodnight has destroyed an entire island. But Bond, with the time in hand, is able to go and get the Solex. But Goodnight puts his life in danger again, because as she's looking down, she's just scooting back and her butt hits the button, and this solar beam that we got to see earlier with Scaramanga comes back into play. And the only thing that saves his life is overcast. He lives in Florida. What a lucky guy. The sun is covered. He's able to get out the solar array, and the beam comes back. He tells Goodnight, go. And they're able to leave. They get on. I'll admit, Goodnight does lead him to the ship that Scaramanga had this entire movie, and they're able to escape. But right before the end, there's one last thing. Knick-Knack. He has snuck aboard the ship. He is hidden in the roof I guess the ceiling of the room where Bond is about to have his time with Goodnight. And Goodnight does notice him, screams, so Bond flips him over, and he stuffs Knick-Knack in a suitcase, takes him outside, and she's saying, oh, you didn't. And he says, I did. I assumed that he was going to just throw him overboard. But no, he has him in a little rope cage and has him stuck up where a lobster where the lobster cages are. And that's how the movie ends. It's very disappointing. Those are my thoughts on this movie. This is a movie that has a lot to it, a lot of weight that I do like, but it's filled in with just stupid moments, not stupid funny moments. They're trying to be funny, but it's just stupid moments. And you take what could be a decent Bond film and you've made a joke. This is Goldmember. Jeez.
It's frustrating in a way because I think that the scenery here with the base, and I've talked about how I love a lot of the set pieces and how good and simplistic they look, and it's most of this with the outside stuff is all natural. I mean, that's a legitimate beach over there in Thailand, and you've got is one of the best villains that you've got here. You've got a guy that's just tremendous on screen. Roger Moore is showing you a very dark, rough side of him, saying, "Hey, he's not no pansy or whatever," because he gets dumbed down to two or three little thoughts and over his career. And when I think he's done a great job playing Bond. Here, you've just got this great little, as we say, the circle of the story where you end up where you started, which is back on Scaramanga's private retreat, just like we did. We saw the shot at the opening and the beginning, so we've come full circle. And yes, he's showing off, but I'm going to go flat out and say it here too. We don't have to dive too deep into it. Pussy galore, lesbian. But yet, thanks to Bond's sexual prowess, she's now seen the right side of the tracks, if you were. She got bonded, you could say. It's intimated heavily, I think, in not necessarily this movie, but at least from the books that Scaramanga, homosexual. We had in Diamonds Are Forever, which as a kid, I had no idea what was going on. But as an adult, I go, oh, the two hitmen at the end of the ship that basically they stole this whole idea from, homosexual. Again, have no issues with it, have no problems with it. I just wonder if it's this British sense of humor trying to make fun of certain things here too that they put them in. Don't know why, because it doesn't add anything. It only takes it away. You've got Knick-Knack here because he's vertically challenged. Yes, we know him as Tattoo from Fantasy Island if you watch that show. And of course, he looks even smaller because how tall Christopher Lee is in real life, 6'3", 6'4". And Christopher Lee is like, I think, related to Ian Fleming, like he's a step cousin or step brother or something. And he was in the precursor of what would MI5 or MI6 would actually be. I mean, Christopher Lee is legitimate, top to bottom, his whole entire career. I mean, just a fascinating individual. So he just carries it with him. He's not just some guy in a cape that says nothing as Dracula in Hammer Films. The guy's legit. He's not physically imposing, but he carries himself very royally. And I think Roger Moore does a great job of that too. But you could argue here too, this whole thing is this, well, Bond, won't you be my friend? Because I'm gay for you. And if not, I'm just going to kill you, which is stupid and dumb. But it seems like the writers here for Bond, with Richard Maibaum, was in a big part of all these scripts, at least early on, decided to do. I don't get it. It's got to be a British thing because I just don't see the need to do all these silly things. Because here at the end, you've got this wonderful facility, and okay, we don't really care about the plot. We just care about who it affects people-wise, and Bond's chasing it. That's good enough for spy stuff. We're not getting conceptual on how solar energy can transform mankind and all this other kind of eye in a pie sky and blah, blah stuff. It's crap. I'm getting so mad thinking about it. But this is still done very well with the set, to your point, where they're going around talking about stuff, and Scaramanga's like, "Yeah, I didn't really know all this crap, James. That's why you're so smart." And it's like he treats him to dinner and all that too. And Bond's basically like telling him, "Hey, you're a goof, and I look forward to killing you." Basically,
Yep.
it's a nice little dinner scene because Bond, again, Roger Moore is a handsome goof, but he's not. This is legit. These are two top tier guys going out, and Scaramanga could take him out at any time. So you're like, okay, well, I mean, we know Bond's going to win, but how they get there is what's important. And it's all set up. It takes its time. It's great. The plane that he flew in gets blown up. We see that crazy maniacal look briefly in Scaramanga's eyes where he loses control because he's excited for destroying stuff. And his crib is incredible. It's so beautiful, right? All these offices of the bad guys are tremendous. They got a wonderful spread there too with all the foods. I don't think I've seen any cucumber sandwiches, but I don't know. I agree with you 100%. Yeah, Goodnight's there just to be in a bikini and look great. Okay, fine. You have them back to back, getting ready for a gun duel. That's kick ass, and it's on the beach. I like it. It's exactly kind of perverse how Knick-Knack is supposed to be in charge of trying to kill Scaramanga with certain rules, and then he'll inherit everything Scaramanga, and that keeps him on his toes. That's why they have this weird relationship. We don't know anything about Knick-Knack. It's odd, it's disturbing, and it works. That's why all this campiness ruins it. Because when you see them, back to back, old school, counting and taking their steps and turning, it's great. And it still works as cheesy and dated as it looks, them being in that underground fun house, horror house that you want to call it. I like it. It works and it fits for that time. Is it dated? Yes, but I'll still take it. I like it. But then to your point, you get this dumb stuff with her at the end, and it's like, really? Really? And then Nick Nack showing up again on the junk. Okay, it's nice that Scaramanga has, oh, and that was the way to get out of there, logistically speaking, and all that too. But I don't know, man. I feel let down by this movie because I still think it's a solid Bond film, and I still enjoy it a lot. I really do, but it's just infuriating. So sometimes when I want to get pissed out of a Bond movie, but really like some stuff, this is my go-to, especially with what we've talked about so far too. So,
Yeah.
I,
I'm going
go
to
ahead.
say that Jim Sorensen said that he thought it was all right for a Bond film, but he has to be in the mood to rewatch it. I would have to be drinking with friends. That's an idea for a stream, Rob. We'll just sit down, we'll get out whatever our choice of alcohol, and just rewatch the movie and commentate through it, because that's the only way that I'm going to be rushing to this movie anytime soon. I'm really disappointed. And where there is solid moments, I'll admit, it's just so stupid at times. It's ridiculous. It's like they thought, okay, we got to extend this somehow. And no, they shouldn't have. Make this movie an hour and a half, finish with the Solex, and have a final chase down with Scaramanga. You've got a solid hour and a half spy thriller. No, they go ahead and cut that out. They don't want any of that. They want another hour of extended bullshit, and it's just sad.
Well, you can argue that that's been the template in a lot of the films, and while there's extended action chase sequences, like in, say, A Diamonds Are Forever that we recently mentioned, it's, that tongue-in-cheek British humor. Sometimes they just can't help themselves, I feel, and I think they're trying to play it safe a little bit, but when they don't, they put in some of these scenes, it's like, man, you guys really can hit a home run. And up to now, I still think that one of the most beautiful natural films, of course, is Goldfinger.
Yep.
And I agree with you. The theme song here was good for the time. It's very catchy. It does have a big horn section to it. It's catchy, but that's all I can say about it. It's not one that I just find it annoying, even though I thought it sung well. I mean, and I'm not trying to shit on it, but compared to what we've had before, what we've got accustomed to, it does feel let down. It's like,
you know what's worse?
What?
At the end here, they have a lead up into a continuation of the song, and the singer says about James Bond. It totally ruins the feel of the song at that moment, because while a Bond song should accompany it well, it should follow it, it should have something to tie it into it. As soon as you mention James Bond, I feel that the song is crushed because it doesn't have any weight on its own. And the best Bond songs of all time need to be able to stand on their own merit. Goldfinger obviously did push that, yes, but it's still so good. I could play that song and enjoy it on its own, but this one, atrocious. Ugh.
Well, so now with Roger Moore, we've had Live and Let Die. We've had Man with the Golden Gun. I actually like this one better than Live and Let Die. I do. I like the kookier, goofy, occult elements, actually, of the other one. But that one's a hell of a lot campier to me and cheesier and easier to watch for that. But it's very forgettable. This one has an intensity about it because of some of these scenes that I go, those are the ones that stand out to me that make me like it a bit better despite some of the bad elements. And I think, unfortunately, we're going to see this as a trend continue with the Roger Moore films for the most part. And it is what it is. I mean, with Connery, I felt like for the most part he had checked out by Diamonds Are Forever, and I don't know. I mean, it's Dr. No seems incomplete because it's the first one. Seems a little raw. From Russia with Love is, I think, tremendous. I think it's very charming. I think it epitomizes what a lot of Bond films could be. Goldfinger's done very well. Could care less for the ending and some of the goofy stuff they have in it, and then you've got On Her Majesty's Secret Service, which I think it's like Wilt Chamberlain from the NBA. You have to put it off to the side because it basically is everything. And much like Wilt Chamberlain is, head and shoulders above everybody else, On Her Majesty's Secret Service, just, I don't know how they did it. They seem like they hit a home run. But Thunderball is probably the funnest, I think, out of the Roger or the Sean Connery ones. And right now we only have 2 Roger Moore, and we definitely see that Roger's going to look good in a suit. He's going to be charming. He's going to have the one-liners. We see him being a bit darker in here than he was in the first one, which is good. So when we get into the next film next month, when we do The Spy Who Loved Me, we'll see if that trend continues. However, we've got something going on in the background in the 70s too, and it's something called blockbusters, like Jaws, like Star Wars. And Bond at this point, even though this is relatively speaking poor performing, even though it made like 10 times its budget, it's still a blockbuster type film. So you're going to see these safe templates of a film, and it's when they digress from them that they can be hit or miss. And unfortunately, that's where I liked the movie or hated the movie. Most of the other stuff is just We know the Bond people know how to make a good film. They know how to include a good stunt. They know how to go to different locations and film stuff. I like that. That's what made me fall in love with Bond films, making me feel like I was a world traveler and meeting exotic women and traveling to different places and thinking on your feet and all that kind of stuff. Very opposite of what we talk about weekly on Sundays, normally in this place at 6 p.m. Eastern, when we talk about The Prisoner, which is everything that James Bond is not a womanizer, somebody who thinks with his head, not his other head, and someone who doesn't use a gun. Totally different with what they choose to discuss. And so you guys new to the show can check that out. But yeah, I agree with you totally. Very frustrating film. And like Jim says in chat, that's a great way of describing it. You've got to be in the right mood for it. When you want to be a little pissy, when you want to get a little annoyed, when you want to feel a little dark side of James Bond, I'm telling you, these couple scenes in here, off the top of my head from what we've seen so far, has got to be some of the darkest stuff we've seen with James Bond. It really is.
It's sadly packed with a bunch of silly wrapping around it that totally ruins the feel. And I'm also going to say there are moments in this review that we did where we barely extended past where we normally extend. We have an average of about an hour and 15, hour and 10 minutes. If we didn't go over some of the stuff that we did in a little more detail, we would have been done in 45, because this movie, with how fast it is, there's just not a lot to go through unless you are pissed off at it. That's at least how I feel.
Yeah, and you never know what's going on behind the scenes. Things are starting to change, I think, with the actual production of the James Bond films too. That has a definite effect on it too. That's something we'll get into a little bit more later over the next couple films, because I think there's absolutely no way you can ignore that for what's happening with the franchise as it evolves to this point here. Because again, in 1974, when this came out, it's already been around 12 years, as you've had several films too. So it's an interesting trend, because again, the series is good 50 plus years old, and it's something that as we go through each of these films month to month, each film at a time, it's interesting to compare it to before. I'll ask you this, and then we'll call it a night. Out of the 2 Roger Moore films, which one did you like better so far? This one or the other one?
Definitely Live or Let Die. While I'll agree that there's some campiness to it, it's fun in its way of being campy. It's not just stupidity for 2.5 hours, but sadly there's a lot of that there. War Chief reviews, I'm just going to go ahead and say we are reviewing some right now, like The Prisoner. Equalizer is definitely an idea of what to consider, because we do a lot of British television right now. And
Equalizer is tremendous. I mean, obviously the crossover here with James Bond, Christopher Lee is, they were he played in the original Wicker Man, and Edward Woodward was the cop, and Britt Ekland actually was in that as well too. That's something I had wanted to get out. Equalizer's on the short list. I know we joke about that, and TJ Hooker putting that up there on our TVs. Those are definitely a few that we've talked about doing before. As we get through The Prisoner and we go to decide on the next show, then too, that'll definitely get some more discussion on what we want to continue. Go ahead.
And I will definitely not be as fired up as I am right now, in anger at least. So let's go ahead and wrap this up.
Yeah, so for you guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We got our Father's Day special come up. We're reviewing Commando with Arnold Schwarzenegger, so I'm getting ready to send the link out for that here too. It's our Father's Day special here on the Extreme Movie Show. For Professor Pixel, everybody involved here, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. As always, have a good night and stay extreme. Extreme.
Extreme.